Hi. Um, so I've been putting in lots of nights just to make this speed project work. I want to sort of show you where I am because I've kind of rewritten the book about 4 times now. So this is what we started with. I wanted to design a course that showed you how to get speed from your training into your performance. So, and obviously by this I mean your client. So that was my goal. And so I didn't really define what performance was, and I thought this would be quite generic. So I thought the thing you do for your legs would be the thing you do for your arms. So what I did was I said, well, what would be the components, or what would be the barriers, depending on which side of the coin you look at. And so I was presuming things like this. I was presuming that there'd be a power element from the body. So the amount of power you could generate would probably be important. I thought that the majority of things would come from running, and so I thought running would become a major component of what we did, not realizing that then obviously we have short and we have long, and so that's obviously a problem too, because when you look at the components that make up sort of short distance running, then you're looking at the 3 components. You're looking sort of like acceleration, you're looking at full pace, and then what you're looking at is how long you can hold off deceleration. So so that's a component. Although now with the research as well, you also might want to tie in a final push, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I thought these would be linked. I thought this would be linked together, but obviously things start to come up that were interesting. Now long term, you've still got some components of acceleration, but the longer you go, the less acceleration is important. So that becomes sort of a tiny component of what we do, although you might have more mini accelerations. And if you have more mini accelerations, maybe then that's a different training component. But now what you've got is you've got running economy that we've got to sort of look at. So the running economy or running efficiency, which I know are 2 different things, but what I'm looking at here is I'm thinking about well, you know, how long can you go at full pace? Where full pace is like your race pace, not necessarily a flat out sprint. And so now I thought that would be linear, but obviously there's components of that, and it more undulates depending on where you are in the race and where you are psychologically. And so you might have a mean race pace over time from 0 to finish, but actually you're going to undulate through the pace, and that's going to be a brain thing as much as a body thing. So it's how you interpret where you are and what you're doing. Now with all these, obviously becomes the big thing that I wanted to concentrate on anyway, which was technique. Now with technique, I thought that's all coaching. So I thought if we went for something upper body, let's say we went for boxing, if you went for something upper body, I thought boxing would be related to power, but it could also be related to acceleration of the fist. These might be mini accelerations, and so it might also be, and it might be the opposite of what you want in a sprint, which is instead of how long it takes you to decelerate, then instead, and I'm just looking for that now what you might want to do is you might want to actually be able to accelerate. So a negative version of that, you might be able to decelerate really quick so you can accelerate again somewhere else. And I'm not, as we go through this is another component that just needs some finishing touches to it, but then this area becomes more like a repeated turn, not a speed thing. So repeated turn is a whole new thing. So if this is a repeated turn, it might still link into the big problem we're having. Now, as I said, I thought coaching was all about this. And I thought within there was power, and don't just think power, think anything physical, so strength, flexibility, all that kind of stuff. But actually, now I look at it, then really what we're trying to do is to get speed training into performance. Then what we have to do is we have to follow the rules of getting fit. So to follow the rules of getting fit, and whenever I say that, I think, oh wow, it's like me dad at going to keep fit lessons, men's keep fit. That's not what I mean. What I mean is to get and stay fit, then you have to push some thresholds. Now those thresholds should be energy system based, and I harp on about this all the time on our courses. Push the threshold, get the physical response, and that's what I thought would happen, and that's the component that I would say, wow, brilliant, if we push the energy system hard enough, we'll get that response. And of course, if we want a double whammy on there, let's do it with the biomechanics that are similar. And that's going to take you into the top so many trainers ever, in my opinion. But it's not the answer. And now that gets interesting to me, because that was my answer, and up until this weekend, and thank you Michael Haley, you were awesome at this would be my answer to this solution. You know, get the biomechanics right, get the energy systems right. This was kind of where that little mini argument about loaded training came in, because what's the point? Loaded training makes no sense. Why are you Olympic lifting and deadlifting for running? Because it didn't tick that biomechanics box. And I mean, not even certain it ticks the energy systems box. However, what I'd not thought about was, what if your body has a natural reserve? So, I know this. I know your body has a natural reserve. I know from powerlifting training, one of your big goals is to overcome this natural kind of reserve so you can get to everything you need in order to perform. Now the problem with your reserve is, your reserve can be your barrier to getting past your threshold. And so, if that's the case, where's your personal reserve? And I haven't read this yet, so I'm making a bit of a presumption, but where's your personal reserve? Because that might ultimately tell you how well you're going to fare with these exercises. Now, your reserve is built on a mental thing, but not necessarily a conscious thing. Just it's a collection of all the data coming in, internal and external data, and this internal and external data, in theory, gives you a management system here. And so the output to your muscles will be, we can't work this hard, and so by muscles think the whole system, saying, right, well, I want us at 70%, so we have 30% in reserve ready to go. Now these percentages aren't fixed, so it won't be, I'm running a 10k race, so in this 10k race I'm going to run at 70% of what I've got, because then that'll be safe, it'll be a good time, my body can handle it. But this will fluctuate as far as I understand. Now that fluctuation will depend on your importance to this movement. So if you're towards the end of the race, it's been shown that you'll start to increase your pace and you'll get that second wind. And it's shown that some of the best outputs for strength and some of the best outputs for aerobic sort of output happens towards the end of a race, which must then now put it in a psychological point of view. So then what governs this? And I just can't find the evidence. There's nothing massively there. So it leads me back to coaching. Now coaching's interesting to me, because in coaching what I've got to do is I've got to use and I kind of use the term, it's actually from this is going to show my age, but in the I think it must have been 80s, I had a BBC 32K computer, and for that I had a game called Fair Means or Foul. Fair means or foul. And so what that meant was get a result. So when you're coaching, I think that's about getting the result in session however you can, to make sure out of session you're building up a set of components that will come together, that will change the energy system, that will make you better through the biomechanics. Now, bearing in mind, this potentially is a brain thing. And some of the studies I've been through, they've shown as you get fatigued, you move from knee running to ankle running, which puts more pressure on the knee. You move from hip stuff to quad stuff. All that kind of stuff happens. But if I can coach you to feel that, maybe that's when you're dropping this percentage here. Maybe that stops right towards the end of the run, or maybe they're recording at the end of the run that final push. But this is not just the run. This must be the boxing, and this must be the continual throwing. I'm not certain about one-off sports. But this all comes together, and now I'm in this sort of quandary. I'm thinking, well, maybe this is the key. Maybe the key to speed training performance is being able to manage fatigue in a way that will allow you to train harder, but safely. And maybe some of the feelings you get from loaded training carry over and allow you to access more energy system in the biomechanics. And maybe the gym session isn't about the muscle, which is where my argument sat. Maybe it's about the brain, which is where my argument didn't sit. And maybe having pushed yourself through that barrier, that pain barrier, that whatever it is, maybe you've built that confidence, or maybe you've done something to change these percentages. Now, obviously, at the moment, I'm flying my flag of making this up. And it's not fully made up. It's based on the evidence. And what the evidence is saying is that when you do resisted training, you can see a difference. When you do plyometric training, you can see even more of a difference. It doesn't always relate to RE, and it doesn't always relate to cadence, and it doesn't always relate to stride length. And so it's more likely to do that in less elite runners, but in elite runners it's less likely to affect those things, yet can affect time. So that starts to make me wonder. And then the next thing is, when you look at sort of injuries and when what predicts an injury, then really prior injury is important. If you see a prior injury in a client, that's good likelihood you're going to see that injury again. But if you see an injury in a client, if you see them getting fatigued and not having the skill to understand they've changed the way they run, so you see a less experienced runner, for example, then you're also seeing someone who's pushing themselves towards a potential injury because they just don't have that ability to recognize how their movement's changed. In theory, and I'm waving my flag a little bit, I'm not waving my flag to say inexperienced runners get more injuries than experienced runners, but I am waving my flag a little bit here to just say, well, I think that might have something to do with interpreting your body and being able to control it when you hit fatigue, and you do start, your brain starts to whir into action and change the way you run in order to hold back some reserve in order to stop you self-destructing. Now, I think if you then link that to volume of running, I've read anything from 40 kilometers, I think 60 was the highest I saw. If you run above that volume, that's the only other big determinant that you might get injured, or you're more likely to get injured, other than a previous injury. And so the three components together starts to suggest to me that this injury that you might feel might look like a change in biomechanics, but might actually come from your body protecting itself from an energy system perspective and changing the run from something that's more dynamic to less dynamic in order to preserve energy. And that may be, and I am big flag waving now, that may be all to do with your previous experience, your personal limits, your personal opinion, everything that comes together to make that subconscious decision. And if that's the case, then in training, your goal is to try and seep out more than the, say, 70% at the top end, or an average of 70% over the whole race, by lifting the areas that maybe your body's overprotecting. And that would probably come from experience. And that experience would be good runs, quality runs where you get a good time, you're in the right mindset, you've overcome any worries about injury, and you're there ready to perform. And this brings me back then to when you see clients that come back from injury and run with what you might consider a poor biomechanic, then maybe part of that is the injury and the new sort of stiffness of muscles that they're having to get around. Part of that might be this sort of regulatory system from the brain stopping them perform the way they want to. So I'm trying to get this all together in this one book, and it's starting to come together now, and I'm starting to see some charts, and as you can see from my spider diagram, it seems to start to make a little sense. This will be done. I'm just going to stay up hours and hours and get this done for you. It's one of the most exciting projects I've done. I'm really pleased we've done it, and it sets us up really well for in the next 2 weeks releasing their building assessments for clients, because it means the assessment's going to take on a whole new sort of outlook. But I really wanted to share this with you. I wanted you to know that this is a big thing, and I've rewritten this course a few times now, and I've read about 350, 400 papers. I've got it down to 50 that are kind of usable. I'm not the best researcher in the world, but I can pick some stuff up and others. What interests me now is that I set off on a bit of a mission this weekend on loaded training, and now it's almost irrelevant, other than some loaded training seems to get you some result. I still think it's up in the brain. By the way, my brains are terrible, but you know, I do my best. I think it's up in the brain that you're creating the most effect short term, and it's short term effects they measure. It's sort of 5 weeks and small groups. So as long as you can marry this off against the potential for injury, then maybe you know, tough, go and do bicep curls and leg press, who cares, if it's on the way to getting this right. The only other thing I'd add, and the only thing I'm looking at, is that possibly some of the studies have shown that if you've got a difference in stiffness, tissue stiffness from one leg to the other, that's significant, then that can be a sign that you're carrying an injury. So it's not that that'll cause an injury, just you're carrying an injury that you didn't really know about or fully recover from. If you don't fully recover from an injury, that does put you at an even greater risk of an injury straight after. What I'd say there is that maybe what you need to be doing is you need to be monitoring your clients so well that if they get faster but this asymmetry stays, then maybe you can say that's a good thing, that's just their style. Maybe the asymmetry starts to disappear and they start to get faster and better at running, and you can say that's awesome, that means you were carrying an injury and we were right to go steady because of what we saw. And maybe the only other one which is similar is you push them too hard and that asymmetry does turn out that they were injured and they pick up an injury again. So the important thing there is not to say let's start ruling out asymmetry as a valid assessment, but let's put it in its place. And its place is, until we know it's not their technique, we need to have one eye on it to make sure that we don't put too much volume through and it end up being an injury. So if it starts to get more, if you start to get someone to become less asymmetrical as they become more trained, then they're probably recovering from some kind of injury somewhere that they never even felt or had diagnosed. If not, if they improve performance, don't get injured, and they stay asymmetrical, that might just be their style. And if you're not aware of this, and you take someone and go, you're asymmetrical, just run through it, that's your style, and actually they were carrying an injury they didn't know, you might be the person that pushes them over the line a bit further. And it might be, if you see a big asymmetry, it might be that you just say, I'd love you to just get this checked out. Not because asymmetry means injury, just because asymmetry sometimes means you have been injured in the past. But it might just be your personal style. So give them that option. I mean, this is it's quite an in-depth sort of look at the whole course. It's kind of what the whole book's going to say. I'm going to stick this on YouTube. I'm going to let everyone share this. If you're quick enough, you'll be able to jump online and get on the course before everyone else and get a really decent price for it. If you're not quick enough, this really is a game changer, and I think you'll see this all come into our specialist courses and advanced functional trainer courses very soon. If you're on our Obsessed group, and our Obsessed group is wicked, thank you so much for your patience and staying with this and interacting and even now pushing forward papers. And if you've got anything to add, you know I'm going to put it in that manual if you're quick enough. And if you add it, even if it's 6 months time, it'll go in and in the course so that we stay up to date. Thank you all for listening, and I hope I didn't bore you too much, and I hope this big squiggly diagram means something to you soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.